Anyway. And we are live. Welcome to the MMA Strategy Show, something that I have not done in a pretty long time. It is Thursday, October 14th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Pete the Heat Rogers. We are here to break down UFC Fight Night, Aspen Ladd, Norman, on a card where 7 of the 22 fighters don't have Wikipedia pages. This should be fun to dig into. But first, let's start here. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Pete, it's been a while. How are you?
What's up, my man? How are you? I'm happy to be joined by you. I always enjoy doing a card whenever you can sub in, so to speak, when Jason's unable to. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see where you lie on some of these matchups. I know it's a very weird card. It's not an ideal card by any means, but I think for DraftKings and FanDuel, we can get a little bit different this week, and I think it'll work out in our favor. Yeah,
I'm excited to dive into it. There's a couple fights on this card that really do stand out, guys that I want to see fight, or gals. I don't want to be too specific with my terminology. Apologies in advance. But there's a few fights on this card that look like they could be pretty good. So I'm excited to dive into it. As I said, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You guys know the drill for me. We do have a lot to talk about. 11 fights as of right now. We don't have FanDuel salaries yet, I believe, but I'm going to hit F5 on my browser just to check it out. And I would be correct. So still no FanDuel salaries. Crazy. DraftKings is almost updated. We have everyone but one fighter at this point. So we have pretty much the full picture. I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, FanDuel is always a little bit behind when it comes to the salaries. I think that they take more of a patient last-minute approach, making sure that they don't have any fighters like incorrectly priced. Given they're not always accurate with that, but for DraftKings, they take forever with some of these substitute fighters as well. So we'll have to pay attention to it, because I definitely want to see what the salaries on Lupita Godinez. I definitely am intrigued with her in this matchup.
Yeah, particularly I had the boss man run our projections before we got started, even though we didn't have that information. And standing out, going to have pretty sizable win odds at the very least. Don't necessarily know about the finish odds, but that's something that we'll get into when we get to that fight. Now we're at the part where we're going to kick it off. Main event of the evening, Aspen Ladd, Norman Dumont. It's a close fight. Ladd, when I pulled the odds, -138, Dumont +112. This was originally going to be Holly Holm and Dumont. Not so fast, my friends, on that bad boy. Ladd going up in weight as well. I'm just going to throw it to you pretty generally. What do you see for this fight as the main event? Ladd coming back after what? It's got to be like 2 years now, right?
Well, so actually Ladd, I mean, she was supposed to fight 2 weeks ago, missed weight. And then prior to that, it was basically a 2-year absence since her fight against Yana Kunitskaya, where she looked damn good. But since that fight, she's had canceled bouts from Juliana Pena, Sarah McMahon, to back-to-back supposed fights against Macy Chiasson. So, I mean, it's tough to really gauge where her skill level is at this point, given the fact that she missed weight last week, 2 weeks ago. It's always weird with her. She always seems to stumble over her weight cuts, whether it's one thing. I don't know if it's a lack of work ethic or mismanagement of weight or nutrition or whatever it is, but I feel like the UFC is basically forcing her hand, saying, hey, you kind of screwed up 2 weeks ago. Take this fight a weight class where you're supposed to be at from now on. Do us a solid, get us in there. And, we lost Holly Holm. You could basically get back into our good graces by taking this fight against Norma Dumont, who, in my opinion, I think is a pretty difficult fight for a lot of fighters. Relatively green from an experience standpoint, 6-1, but brings a lot of skill into this matchup. So I'm interested to see how they clash, and interested to see how Aspen Ladd handles, the 5 rounds going 2 weeks ago. She was only supposed to fight 3.
Do you think the added weight is a benefit for her or a negative for her?
Well, I'll tell you that the fact that she had a bad cut 2 weeks ago, I think no matter what is not a good sign. Like trying to bounce back at, your natural weight, that makes sense. That's probably what she should have been doing all along, instead of trying to kill herself to get down to such a low weight. I think if this was like a month later or something like that, where she could allow her body to somewhat heal, we don't know what went wrong in the weight cut. I will say that she'll be pretty good in this division, given the fact she might have some more energy and not be zapped from the weight cut. but she could be relatively undersized. We'll have to see how it plays out. I think that Dumont's a big athlete who struggled to make weight as well. So it's kind of like the clash of, basically 135ers that can't make the weight anymore. So I think they kind of like negate each other as far as that goes. The 5 rounds is what really, piques my interest with this bout, especially since you're only supposed to go 2 weeks prior.
Do you think that Ladd's going to be angling to go back down if she wins here? Obviously, after a loss, I don't
think the UFC will allow it. Honestly,
okay.
If I was the UFC, I'd say, hey, look, we can't do this again. She's missed weight multiple times. She's not only missed weight, Josh, she looks terrible. Like she looks horrible on the scale, like trembling, damn near fainting. Like she causes a scene because her body is so depleted, and that's just not healthy. She doesn't look good. I think that she could add some mass and stay a weight class higher, and I think it might work out in her advantage. But trying to really, I understand the philosophy of getting to the lowest weight possible to have the strength advantage in the matchup. But I'll tell you, like, there's no way that I'm making 145 pounds now. And where I'm at in my natural weight and going forward at lightweight, I feel better than I did when I was at featherweight. So I think that she should embrace the change. And I don't think the UFC will welcome her going back down to 135.
You've mentioned the cardio issues that we could potentially see heading into a 5-round fight. Fight goes to the distance right now is basically a coin flip. It's a little bit of a lean to no. It's like minus 120 to minus 110 type stuff. So for all intents and purposes, we're flipping a coin on whether or not this fight goes to the distance. If it does, that could be very interesting for Aspen Ladd. So what are some of the mechanisms you're looking for her? How do you feel she looks for this card? Is she someone you're interested in?
I am interested in both fighters, to be honest, given their salaries. Aspen Ladd at 8,400. Okay. The favorite in a weight class higher, given the struggles we just spoke of. I like the underdog, Norma Dumont, just a little bit more, given the salary relief, given the possibility of her going in there with a better camp, so to speak, and being able to possibly take advantage of Aspen Ladd's cardio or, sometimes like, they're pretty evenly matched. So I think that they could, have a round apiece going into the third, and then so on. We'll have to see how the cardio of Ladd holds up. But I think Ladd's going to need to, implement takedowns, which is going to be very, very difficult. She needs to get top position. And when she's in top position, she has some of the best ground and pound, like within women's MMA. So that is her path to victory. But absorbing strikes on the feet, I'm a little worried about. I'm also worried about her cardio. And I think Norma Dumont's really, really talented and is a fighter on the rise for sure. It's a little bit much of a step up in competition for Norma Dumont, if we're being honest. I mean, lost her debut to Megan Anderson, won against Ashley Evans Smith, which is a veteran. That's good. Beating Felicia Spencer is where I think, she kind of got the attention of the UFC. Like, okay, like this girl can really be somebody. So with all that being said, I'm going to have some split ownership given the salary. At Norma Dumont at 7,800. So I'm okay with getting to either, but I am leaning in the Dumont side.
3 losses for Felicia Spencer: Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunez, Norma Dumont. One of those things feels like it's not like the other, but at the same time, who the hell knows? Yeah,
who knows? I mean, she's young into her career. She's 6-1. That's why like that fight really shocked me. I did not see that happening. I thought Felicia Spencer, has looked good in some of her fights, especially short notice against Chris Cyborg in moments. But that win is definitely huge for Norma Dumont, and maybe she's a fighter on the rise.
The question now becomes, is the main event a must roster fight? Because this doesn't necessarily feel like it's a guarantee.
Yeah, I would lean. I'll probably get to more of the underdog than the favorite. I think Aspen Ladd's going to have to do a lot at 8,400. And there's so many question marks surrounding her. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's not a must roster fight. There's some other volatile matchups that we can get that feel like better, sure things. This could be a pretty evenly matched contest where their strengths could nullify each other. So I'm going to have plenty of it, but I don't feel like it's a must roster.
We just got projections, 20, 25 minutes ago, something in that neighborhood. It's not like I've run any lineups, and we're still missing a fighter in salary. So I'm speaking pretty randomly here, but just looking at it on the surface, I think stacking Ladd and Dumont and cash is a pretty good spot to be. 8,400 for Ladd, 7,800 for Dumont. These are both DraftKings since FanDuel doesn't have the salaries out. They're both expected to be pretty heavily owned. I think given those salaries and the fact that this is the solo 5-round fight on this card. I think stacking in cash is pretty okay here.
Yeah, stacking in cash is fine. And even more so when it's women's MMA, because for the longest time, women's MMA would go the distance more than other bouts. I think that, given the aggressiveness of both of these fighters are going to test each other, you could have a losing fighter. Well, if you stack it, you're going to have a losing fighter, but you could have a fighter get a decent total given the 5 rounds. So I'm okay with that in cash. And I think it could be sneaky depending on how the fight is, and like maybe one of your lineups for GPPs, but more cash oriented.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on for this particular fight? Other than I do want to hit you with who wins.
Yeah, so I'm going to say Norma Dumont pulls off the upset. I think that she does. It's crazy that I actually feel that way, because I didn't think that Norma Dumont would be a fighter of such a high caliber, but she's checking more boxes than Aspen Ladd is, and I'm putting more asterisks and question marks next to Ladd. So until Ladd starts to answer my questions, I got to side with the underdog slightly here. I'm just intrigued to see the grappling between them both. I have to pay attention to the weigh-in. So Saturday, when we do our show live before lock, I will have an update to see how Aspen Ladd looked on a scale. I mean, yes, it's a weight class higher, but I mean, she really doesn't surprise me nowadays to possibly struggle even at 145. We'll have to see. So check us out on Saturday for an updated look with that.
And let's just hope that Aspen Ladd makes it to the cage too.
Yes.
Hasn't necessarily happened the past few times we've tried to do this. The last time that Aspen Ladd was in the cage, we never talked about COVID. This was December of 2019. She predates COVID.
It's a long time, brother. And I didn't realize it was that long. Like when you said 2 years, I'm like, I don't know. And I pulled up the Tapology. I'm like, damn, he's right. 2 years.
I mean, I'm a little early.
The Ghana fight was that long ago.
December 2019. I mean, honestly, everything from March of 2020 until right now has been on fast forward or in slow motion, depending on where you're at in the world. But 2019 feels like a very, very long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, since that time, it's all like a blur, right? And we're kind of like, just trying our best. That's all we're doing.
We've got another coin flip fight, second from the top. Andre Arlovski, Carlos Felipe. It's a cool minus 108 on Arlovski, minus 112 on the opposite side. I can very easily talk about Andre Arlovski. That wouldn't be much of an issue for me. That stuff is just ingrained in my brain for the past 10 plus years. But talk to me a little bit about this fight. How are you feeling about it? Arlovski, second from the top.
I'll tell you what, Andre Arlovski is a guy that I've counted out in the past, and I feel like everybody has, especially from the betting perspective, where people want to, target the young guy who's going to take out the aging veteran who had, chin issues throughout his career in certain points. But man, I got to tell you, Andre Arlovski has really surprised me of late, and they haven't given him easy matchups by any means. Yeah. And now he's in there against Carlos Felipe, who is a very, very talented striker. More of a boxer than anything. And, he's aggressive. He plays around a little bit. He debuted against Sergey Spivak, and Sergey Spivak took him down 3 times in that bout. But in his next 3 bouts, he was paired up against strikers, which I think can somewhat give you a glimpse into how this fight's going to go. He fought Jorgen De Castro, Justin Tafa, and Jake Collier. Some questionable decisions in some of those fights. Yes, the Justin Tafa fight, he was outstruck, and that was very, very close. He landed some big shots, but sometimes he plays around a little bit, and I think that could end up being a problem here against Andre Arlovski. The Jake Collier fight, he was outstruck by nearly 40 strikes and still, picked up the split decision victory. So I know a lot of people were crying robbery in that bout. I have to say, I know that Carlos Felipe is really, really good from a striking perspective. But I think that this is a massive, massive step up in competition. And the reason I say that is if you go and you look at who Andre Arlovski has fought, Jairzinho Rosen. Yeah, we could go on, right? I could talk about who he's fought for like 20 minutes, but
we might have an easier time talking about who he hasn't fought.
Yeah, that is very true. Jairzinho Rosenstruck was able to hit him with the death touch and get him out of there. But you think about, what the UFC thought, oh man, Andre might be shot. Let's pair him up against a prospect, Felipe Lins, one of the most disappointing prospects that the UFC has signed, and Andre Arlovski outstruck him. Tanner Boser, a guy who was on fire. Andre Arlovski ended up getting that decision victory as well. Tom Aspinall, my guy, on the feet, was having some problems with Andre Arlovski, had to take him down and ended up getting a quick sub. Chase Sherman, same thing. So I kind of look at Carlos Felipe in the same regard as a lot of those fighters. but not to such a high degree. I feel like he's a lesser version than all those guys that I listed. And I think that Andrei Arlovski is going to end up pulling out the victory here. But as far as DraftKings, I think it's going to be like a lethargic somewhat performance. And at 8,200, I'll have exposure given the salary and how that salary is usually a part of the optimal lineup. But I think that you could be looking at a low total win for Andrei Arlovski.
They tend to be stinkers when Arlovski is in the cage. I assumed that he would have been aggressively finished more. And like, obviously he has been, but just looking back through it, Rosenstruik back in 2019, it was 2 more years before that, Ngannou got him. There's no shame in either one of those knockouts. Yeah. The 2 before that are Overeem and Stipe. We look at that stretch where he lost 5 straight, but it's not like he was just going up against bums. Stipe, Overeem, Barnett, Ngannou back to back to back to back. Like, that's going to be a tough run for a lot of heavyweights, not just Andrei Arlovski.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Brutal. He's so battle tested and he's fought everybody. And I don't know if like the UFC, well, they definitely view him as a staple within a division and somewhat of like a litmus test. Like, go in there, we want to see how these heavyweights are. And you're kind of that gatekeeper of, let's say, the top 15. Like, you start, beating Andrei Arlovski or looking damn good, you're starting to, break into contention. And Andrei Arlovski goes out there and shows a lot of these guys aren't ready for his experience and his, fight IQ. I think that he has really rounded out some of his defensive, deficiencies. And I think that he's going to coast to a victory here as long as he doesn't get hit with multiple big shots. But I think the experience is just going to be a little bit too much, and Andrei Arlovski walk out with the victory.
He fought on UFC 28.
Bro, it's insane. I remember
November 2000.
I remember when Arlovski was known just for having the Fangs mouthpiece. And I was like, who is that guy? And that's when I really started to get into MMA. I was always into kickboxing, but I was like, who is that guy? He is so damn talented.
It's truly wild. The one thing that I wanted to point out on this fight, fight goes to decision, -160. Feels like a likely scenario for me. Obviously, the line is a little bit better than a 50-50 shot.
Yeah.
You probably don't see that all that frequently for heavyweight fights, that high of a fight goes to decision prop. Do we need, and like the ownership isn't there, at least on this first run. Neither guy really pulling all that much. Carlos Felipe at 24%, Andrei Arlovski at 16%. Is this a fight that we kind of, I don't want to say stay away, because obviously you can't just stay away from fights, but this seems like a low priority fight. Yeah,
it's a low priority. It's a good way to put it. I will temper expectations, but I will still roster it just because of the salary. We they don't really have to do a lot, just like a lot of the underdogs don't have to do a lot in a victory to come through for us. But if you're talking about GPPs, we want guys to get us 100 points. And I don't really see that happening from Andrei Arlovski. And I think the line that you mentioned, fight goes the distance, is just shows how much respect that the MMA betting community has for Arlovski. He's battle tested.
Anything else for this fight?
No, not really. Okay. Carlos Felipe from an underdog standpoint can definitely pull it out, and it's heavyweight MMA. One shot, if Andrei isn't defending properly, can change the entire course of the fight. But I like to think that majority of the time Arlovski ends up pulling out the victory here and going the distance.
Jim Miller back in the cage once again, because I feel like the dude might actually live there, taking on Eric Gonzalez. Lost 2 straight, 3 out of his last 4, Miller, that is, but pretty sizable favorite in this one, -225. Fight goes to decision, however, -158. Not that I'm all that surprised by it. What are you expecting here out of Jim Miller in his 800th UFC fight?
It's pretty crazy. I thought that, the Jim Miller train was going to get derailed quite some time ago. And I can go back and, we even think about just early on in 2020, not early on, June 2020, when he was fighting Roosevelt Roberts after losing a unanimous decision to Scott Holtzman. Roosevelt Roberts really looked good, and he looked like he was going to be the next prospect within the division. And, fast forward to now, and he is not that. He has not materialized into that fighter. And, Jim Miller showed some savviness on the ground where if you make a mistake on the mat, he's going to capitalize. Then he fought Vince Pichel and Joe Selecki, lost 2 decisions. But the thing is he loses fights when fighters are able to somewhat nullify his grappling or put him on the bottom. And I think that if he can be offensive with his grappling in a matchup, you have my attention. And I think that's what's going to happen here against Eric Gonzalez. I'm not too impressed with Eric Gonzalez. He is 14-5 overall, but you talk about Jim Miller, who has damn near 50 fights in the UFC. That's 50 fights overall. And he's been in the UFC for like 10, 15 plus years. It's pretty crazy. I think that Jim Miller early on is one of the best fighters, one of the best round one guys out there. He's dangerous. He will test you in the striking exchanges. He will, initiate grappling and try to sub you pretty quickly. But he really, really struggles between Lyme disease and, just cardio in general, round 2.5 to 3. So like the tail end of round 2, round 3, you just close your eyes and walk away from the TV, hoping that he doesn't screw it up. I think that Jim Miller is going to get it done here within 2 rounds. I haven't seen enough from Eric Gonzalez besides being wild on the feet to really lure me in his direction. I will have minimal ownership with him at 7,500. We've seen this before, right? Young upcoming guy comes in there, and even if they pull off a victory over Jim Miller, it's very, very, very tough to get him out of there. Selecki couldn't do it. Pichel couldn't do it. Scott Holtzman couldn't do it. Charles Oliveira did, and so did Dan Hooker. Those guys are pretty damn talented.
Yeah. One of those guys is a champ.
Yeah.
So that'll sort of do it. And a sub, no less, too. Hooker finished him with the knee, but you're not taking Jim Miller out with strikes all that frequently. Best side that you can take in this game right now, fight. I'm so used to doing every other sport at this point in time. Best bet that you can make here is Miller by submission at plus 260. Everything else is pretty long. Gonzalez for the TKO KO is plus 600. Gonzalez by submission is plus 3,400. You're not going anything like that. So if this fight ends inside the distance, it's likely Jim Miller via strangulation or something in that genre.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jim Miller round 1, man, I think that's an interesting bet as well. But via sub would probably be the easiest path to victory. Jim Miller does like to bang on the feet. He throws vicious leg kicks, a beautiful straight left hand down the middle. So he could definitely hurt Gonzalez and TKO him. I just would much rather, at 8,700, I like the price point. I just don't like the fact that Jim Miller at this point, 2021, is still in the cage. Father time is going to catch up to you eventually. It's just a matter of if, not when. Is Eric Gonzalez the guy to go out there and really, bring Jim Miller into deep water and possibly get him out? We'll have to see, but it's hard for me to say yes. So I'm leaning with Jim Miller pretty heavily.
Yeah, Gonzalez doesn't seem to be the guy that I'm looking to target as the lower dollar potential win for an underdog. It seems just easier to go to Miller. If Miller's going to be in an optimal, what do we need? Is that a first round sub? Maybe a second round sub? A lot of takedowns and
second round could happen. He's at 8,700, so second round can happen. It's basically, he has decent volume too. So it's not like he's lethargic at times. When he's on his back, he can't throw anything. So obviously the fights against Pichel and Joe Selecki are not good ones to look at, but throughout his career, his aggressiveness has really gotten him through there. I mean, significant strikes landed per minute, 2.65. That sounds terrible, but when you start to, combine that with offensive takedowns, control time, I think that as long as it's done within 2 rounds, we should be okay.
All righty. Coming up later today, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, NFL Deeper Dive. Laffy, Alex, and Ben starting to break down Eagles and Bucks. That is why you guys get to talk to me. That is where Jason Floyd is right now. 7:30 p.m. NFL Live Before Lock with Eric and Neil, breaking it all the way down to 8:15 or 10 or 20, whatever time NFL Lock is. Some sort of odd number that isn't a natural top of the hour or at the middle point. I hate when that's the coming out of basketball season when you're used to 7 o'clock locks and all of a sudden baseball locks at 7:05. That first week or two is really difficult for the mind.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's what happens when you're on every show and you're doing all this great content for the site and everything. And I know that you're a grinder. So kudos to you. We appreciate you, Josh.
Free content for today. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much. MLB ownership. So if you're looking to play game 5 of Giants and Dodgers, you're in luck. That ownership is free, and it'll be more useful for you than the show that Adam and I did earlier today when we talked about a starting pitcher that isn't starting for that game. Plus, NFL top plays also free today. We move it on to, I'm going to whiff on this name, man. Fiorot?
Manon Fiorot.
Okay, that's pretty close. I recognize the Frenchness in all of it. Myra Bueno on the other side. It's another big favorite here, minus 235 for Fiorot. Talk to me about this one because I think this is a targetable fight.
You ready for this? This might be the next breakthrough fighter in the UFC. I'm telling you guys, I think that we're looking at a future title contender between, with Manon Fiorot. She is nasty. She is so talented, and I love everything about her. She comes from a striking background. Her combinations are incredible. She has great speed, good volume. If you look at her small sample size, strikes landed per minute, 8 strikes per minute, strikes absorbed 1.98. It has been one-way traffic in both of her fights against Leonardo and Ricci. Now, I think that Mayra Bueno Silva will test her in some of the aspects here, especially if, it ends up on the ground. But Bueno Silva likes to strike as well, but I think that she could be a sitting duck for a large majority of this. And I think that Manon Fiorot is really going to burst onto the scene and start to prove that she possibly could be fighting for the title and start to contend. I'm telling you, this girl's a future superstar, man. I haven't been this excited about somebody in a very, very long time. Obviously, the hype train can get derailed if she's taken down and submitted, obviously, which will nullify her strength on the feet. But Mayra Bueno Silva really hasn't done anything to garner like any worry for me at all. Like, she has a good ground game, but she doesn't have a good way to get it to the mat. And I think that's where Manon Fiorot is just going to pick her apart from the outside and coast. My issue is the salary. Does she get her out of there at 8,900, given the fact that she has 2 finishes in her career already in the UFC? High volume, but eventually that fight's going the distance and women's MMA will start to catch up with her. If she finishes Mayra Bueno Silva, I'm telling you, UFC is going to be all over her about billing her as a potential suitor for Valentina Shevchenko one day.
Plus 160 to win by TKO or KO in this bad boy. That looks good. 50-50 shot on fight goes the distance. Do you like her more than Jim Miller? Similar prices.
I love Manon Fiorot. So yeah, I will say yes. Especially like if I was building a parlay, I like Manon. She's like, I'm not overthinking it. I'm plugging her in, and I'll plug her in plenty of lineups. She just finds a way to do it. And I think that Mayra Bueno Silva's toughness could actually boost the total of Manon Fiorot.
Do you see Silva having a shot here? Is that just we get on the ground, she catches her?
Yeah, so she definitely has a shot. And this is MMA. Anything can happen.
Right.
She's a very, very talented grappler. Her striking is good as well. I'm just viewing this as, levels. And I think that Fiorot's level striking is crazy. She needs to avoid getting taken down. If you go back, dating back into her regional tape and early career, you will see that at times she has been controlled, but it looks like she has evolved and turned into a well-rounded mixed martial artist. And I think this could be the matchup where she starts to show everybody like, hey, I've made changes. I'm a well-rounded fighter now. And I'm telling you, I will have exposure to Mayra Bueno Silva because of the possibility of getting a finish on the mat, but it's going to be very, very minimal. I think that naturally targeting the underdog in women's MMA is very, very beneficial, and it usually works out that way because they're close matchups, or armbar from guard is always viable, but I don't see it so much in this matchup.
Yeah, Fiorot with the 4th largest KO win percentages in our top fighters tool. So if you're looking at that, that will help you out quite a bit. We still have to talk about the top 3. We haven't even gotten to the goods, so to speak. I like going to the Fiorot side here. All of the betting odds are looking like someone that I want to try to get excessive GPP exposure to, because the odds of winning by TKO and KO are pretty massive. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I need to hit the 6 key fighters for a card.
Yeah. And Josh, I'm telling you, like, I will be very, very disappointed if she goes out there and lays an egg and doesn't really look good. My hopes are pretty high. And I hope that everybody watching this can actually watch the fights on Saturday and see the talent that Manon Fiorot, I've talked about fighters like Tom Aspinall. I've talked about Hamza Chimaev. I'm telling you, this is the next one.
All righty. I'm anxious to watch now. I'm more interested now than I was beforehand. So that should be exciting. I've also been told now from chat that I look like Sean Strickland's little brother. I'm going to go ahead and assume, 1, that I'm older than him. 2, I'm not entirely, I like him as a fighter.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I want to be a part of his lineage, but I'm happy to watch him fight because it's generally pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think you're not as crazy as him.
I hope not.
Yeah, I would hope not as well. Then we need to sign you up in some MMA fights. Yeah, but he's a talented fighter, but somewhat of a loose cannon.
I like it. All right, we're moving on to Jordan Wright and Julian Marquez. Wright, pretty sizable underdog, plus 198. Marquez minus 250 right now. What's the salary here? I lost it. There we go. 8,800 on Marquez, 7,400 on Jordan Wright. So another big favorite on this card. How are you feeling about Marquez in this spot?
Yeah, I view this as somewhat of a mismatch. I've never really been a Jordan Wright guy. I understand that he has a ton of finishes on his record, but if you look at who he's fought throughout his career, it is literally some of the worst regional fighters you will ever come across, which is okay. I mean, it's more of a boxing approach, and they use that to build a fighter to get him a nice, pretty record. Also, in addition to that, you start to build the fighter's confidence because maybe they're not a very confident fighter, but they have skills. I get that. I do get that. I just think that, Jordan Wright is talented as a striker offensively. It's his defensive flaws that really give me pause in this matchup against Julian Marquez, who hits really, really hard. I think it's the lack of grappling, which I think Julian Marquez can definitely exploit. Marquez also, has some really, really notable wins. If you look at Phil Hawes, like that win aged exceptionally well. Darren Stewart, who's a tough fighter, losing a split decision to Alessio Di Chirico. Okay. That fighter knocked out Joaquin Buckley, Maki Pitolo, Sam Alvey. I think there's some potential here with Julian Marquez if he stops playing around so much and he starts to really channel that aggressiveness. I will be targeting, Julian Marquez because I think he has multiple paths to victory. I think that he could go to the takedown well. I think the more likely outcome is him pinning Jordan Wright against the cage, dirty boxing him a little bit, and then walking away with a finish as this fight goes on. I'm out on Jordan Wright. I know a ton of people that will be reaching for the Beverly Hills Ninja at 7,400, given his KO ability and how, as an underdog, he's come through. Villanueva 108 points, Pickett 112 points. But if you saw anything in that Joaquin Buckley fight, is that he doesn't handle pressure and he doesn't handle aggressiveness so well and somewhat crumbles. And I think if Julian Marquez employs the correct game plan under James Krause, we're going to see a very, very dominant performance. So he's a parlay piece for me in addition to Bueno and Fiorot, and I will get plenty of exposure at 8,800.
Marquez to win inside distance is like minus 140.
Yeah.
Fight to go to decision plus 300. So you're thinking this one's going early, and I'm with you. I really like the idea of getting to Marquez. I think Wright is live in GPPs as a guy that can win this fight early. If we're expecting this fight to end early, it's not just because of Marquez. Marquez to win by TKO or KO is plus 230. Wright's not all that far behind at plus 500. Like, we can talk about, like, plus 500 is not great,
right?
But that gap is not all that huge. So I don't hate the idea of Wright as a play in a GPP, particularly if he really is around 15% owned. If you're in one of those larger field contests, I think this is the first like actual very live dog that we've got at 7,400. Not that I expect him to win frequently. Marquez is clearly the better option, the cash guy you're going to be looking for. But the way that Wright can finish this fight is interesting to me in GPPs.
Yeah, it's a fair point, Josh. Absolutely a fair point. And if you look at Jordan Wright, he's 12-1 overall. 11 of his 12 victories come within the first round. So he's like, Jim Miller, really, really aggressive in round one, has, put people out with a combination of good strikes, some sneaky chokes. He has an excellent striking coach, which I think can possibly refine some techniques and some defensive flaws. He has some potential and he is dangerous. I just think that Julian Marquez's toughness, he'll be able to wear some of these shots. Hopefully he doesn't wear too many of them. And then the one thing that I know why people are a little hesitant with Julian Marquez is because he's constantly bailing himself out from screwing around and making mistakes early in the fight. And I think Jordan Wright, if he has the correct game plan, could possibly exploit that, but I'm still siding with Julian Marquez.
It's so hard to analyze MMA like this because unquestionably, we need to be able to look at people that are pretty sizable underdogs. It's really easy to be like, well, yeah, I really like all of these minus 300 favorites. Right. I feel great about it. We have to talk about that opposite side sometimes, even though it's not the likely scenario. This is like a 2 out of 10 type scenario that we're looking for. But when you get that, that is when you get paid off in MMA DFS.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very difficult thing to roster fighters under that 8,000, because most of the time you don't feel good. If you end up feeling good, it's somewhat of a bad, feel like it. I don't know. It doesn't always materialize like that. And if you're really, really confident about an underdog, there could possibly be an issue. But, there are some better spots that we'll talk about going forward where I think that Jordan Wright will be in my underdog pool, but he will not be a priority.
That makes sense to me. Andrew Sanchez and Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva minus 164. Andrew Sanchez plus 134 in this spot. Bruno Silva is 8,300. Andrew Sanchez 7,900. The numbers are looking, at least based on our top fighters tool, like Bruno Silva looks like a very solid option. How are you breaking this fight down?
Yeah, so he is the striker in the matchup, and you have Andrew Sanchez, who is a solid striker, but has wrestling in his back pocket to use whenever he needs to. The problem is, whether it's a coaching issue, a training issue, he doesn't implement the correct game plan given his strengths. He tries to go out there and just outstrike people, because he has fallen in love with his hands. And if he does that against Bruno Silva, Josh, he'll probably end up getting knocked out in this matchup. So I view this fight as a very pivotal one for the DFS slate. I probably will have close to 80% exposure to this matchup just because I feel like somebody's getting finished, and they both have excellent price points. 8,300 for Silva, 7,900 for Sanchez. You saw in Silva's debut against Wellington Turman that he was taken down, and his takedown defense is somewhat lacking at times given his amazing striking and great aggression within the cage. If Andrew Sanchez can implement the correct game plan, I think he is one of my favorite underdogs on the slate. Yes, he has been knocked out against Makhmud Muradov, and he has been knocked out by James as well, Anthony Smith. But he's rebounded from those losses by coming out a little bit sharper with a better game plan. And if he does that in this fight, I like him to win, honestly. I think that he has the more well-rounded skill set at 7,900. He's a guy I'm looking at pretty significantly here, and I think that he can spring the upset.
Yeah, I would like to get to both sides of this fight. Fight to go to decision is around plus 150, so it's not outside the realm of possibility at all. This one's ending early. It is the betting favorite to end early. Sanchez by TKO or KO is somewhere in the plus 350, plus 400 range. Silva is plus 130-ish for TKO or KO. Obviously, submissions still work. This feels like a fight that's going to finish inside the distance, and if that's the case, given the way that the makeup of this card is set up, you're probably going to need this fight. I'm surprised to see, and we're going to have updates because we still have some missing fighters and stuff, but just where Andrew Sanchez's ownership came in on our first run at 7,900, I think he looks undervalued. I'm expecting to use, you mentioned having 80+% here. I'm totally with you. I think you need to have a lot of this fight.
Yeah, you need a lot of this fight, and I will definitely make a group over on Awesemo.com using the Fantasy Cruncher tool. I'll say that, Andrew Sanchez has that takedown city approach about him if he implements it. I know that he is training at AKA now, has trained at TriStar in the past. When I hear the word AKA or, hear about that camp, I think about getting back to your wrestling roots to somewhat, stifle the offense of your opponents. Like, he's going to go up against very, very dangerous strikers. And if you are starting to become susceptible to getting knocked out, you have to take a safer approach, especially given your skill set. So I think that we could see a boosted grappling total here. I like Andrew Sanchez quite a bit.
If you're a fan of NHL, you're in luck. It's back. And we've got a promo code for you. Crosscheck is the code. Get your first week of Awesemo Plus NHL for $3 using that code. You get access to everything we have for the NHL: projections, ownership, top stacks, lineup builder, premium Slack, and more. That's 75% off your first week. So if you want to get behind the paywall and check out what we have to offer, this is the perfect time to do it if you're a hockey fan. This offer ends October 18th, which is 4 days from now on a day that I can't really think of. I guess it's probably Sunday, but it's hard to do that math in the middle of a read. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Oh, God, hockey. All right, we've got Luana Carolina and Lupita Godinez. I didn't say that last name correct. Godinez.
Oh, you said it right. Godinez.
It is the long. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a while. I don't do a lot of the Latin sounding names any longer. I took Spanish back in the day. Got to remember, eyes sound like E's, man. Eyes sound like E's.
That's right.
Either way, minus 250. And the key piece of this right now, we do not have her salary.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it'll all have to depend on what her salary is. I'm curious to see what the bookmakers are going to set her line at given this fight. If you want to look at the metrics, you have Lupi Godinez 5'2" against Luana Carolina 5'6". 61-inch reach for Godinez, 69-inch for Carolina. So significant reach disadvantage for Godinez, 8 inches in favor of Carolina. So I think that could, bring some hesitance in this matchup. But if you go back and you look at last weekend, Godinez looked amazing against Silvana Gomez Juarez. She landed 5 takedowns and her striking looked on point. And it was basically a perfect blend. Why GSP is such an amazing fighter and was so dangerous to face is because you never knew what he was going to do. He can outstrike you and then he can blend it together. And, I'm not comparing Lupe Godinez, but it kind of was like, wow, she's blending it perfectly. And if she continues that in this matchup, I think that she could coast to a very decisive victory. I like it. I think that she could end up, getting her out of there. She ended up going for an armbar with, less than a minute in the round. So I thought that was somewhat of a mistake when I saw it, but she snatched it up and ended up finishing her. But I'm not a big fan of giving up an advantageous position to hunt an armbar, which is a low percent technique sometimes, especially when you're giving up, the back or side control or basically a dominant wrestling position. So I think that she's going to have a very, very good fight here against Luana Carolina, who was taken down one time against Poliana de Botello. I think Lupe's just going to mix it together so well, and I would be shocked if she's not in the 9,000s. I think that she'll probably be I'd probably say 9,000 flat if I had to guess, but who knows? If she's anything under that, I think that is criminally underpriced. And I think Lupe Godinez is going to be a pivotal part of a lot of my lineups.
Yeah, I think 9,000 flat looks pretty good here. Do you have any concerns with the quick turnaround? Fastest in UFC history, if I saw correctly.
Not really. I'll tell you what, like when I've been in the cage and you come out unscathed and you have a great performance, the best thing to do is get right back in the cage because, you're acclimated. And whenever you're acclimated to this, it sounds so crazy, but inactivity is what kills a lot of careers. And when you're able to go back in under the lights, you were just there. There's no nerves about it. You're already there. You're comfortable. You're able to go out there and somewhat build on your momentum. I think Lupe Godinez is going to dominate this matchup if she blends it together. If she stays on the outside, then man, that's where Luana Carolina has a path to victory.
We don't really have many betting lines, so I don't have too much that I could add to this right now. Mm-hmm. Only one book has a fight goes to decision prop. It's -175, which I do find interesting given Lupe's odds on the fight. But 9K, I think that I'm going to like some of the 89, 88, 8,700 area a little bit more than her, but we need to see the props and everything come out first before I give that a full look-see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where the ownership lies because you know about recency bias and will the public hammer her, when it comes to our, DFS and DFS tournaments. She did have 5 takedowns in one round, Josh. 11 strikes, 5 takedowns, a sub, and she finished it. That is like DraftKings gold right there. And I think that, if she can't get, Luana Carolina out of there, we could be looking at a solid win, via decision where she's able to possibly get 6 to 10 takedowns. We don't know. There's tons of potential here. So I do like some of the 8,000 fighters. There's a couple 9,000 fighters that I'm a little hesitant about given their somewhat lethargic, stylistic matchups and all that stuff. But I'll say that Lupe Godinez is going to be a solid piece.
Big super chat coming in from Samuel Campana. Get ready because I've got 800 different questions to ask. Are you ready?
Yeah, we got Sam with his usual. This is his usual, weekly usual questions.
Okay. Top 2 cash, GPP, underdogs, MVP, and champions. Favorite fight inside the distance, upset of the night, top leverage plays, over under set at 6.5 on my end. Let's get it. So,
damn,
cash
Sam.
plays. So he says MVP, so I assume we're looking at least a little bit for FanDuel there. Couldn't even give you those if we wanted to. Salaries don't even exist yet.
Yeah, right. I mean, we'll have to see where it goes. On FanDuel, we want to target fighters that could get a nice, victory, but also defend takedowns or an early finish. But we'll have to wait on that.
All right. So top 2 cash plays. Highest owned guys that we have right now are Marquez and Klein. Marquez at 8,800 to me, given this setup in this fight and given his odds to win, is close to a cash lock. I really like stacking the main event in cash, at least as of right now. We'll see if that changes at all on Saturday. So that's my side of this cash one. Give me your top 2 GPP plays.
Ooh, top 2 GPPs. It's tough, man. I think that targeting an underdog in the GPP makes a ton of sense. So Andrew Sanchez has my attention because of his takedowns.
Yeah.
I'll say that Manon Fiorot is my favorite overall play, regardless of platform, regardless of tournament or cash. I think that she's viable everywhere. 8,900. I absolutely love her. I think that as long as she could, replicate her previous performances, she's very, very solid.
What fight is most likely to end inside the distance?
It's that Bruno Silva Sanchez fight, in my opinion. That one's really sticking out to me. The Marquez Wright one's right there. Those two fights kind of seem like they're not going to, hear the final bell. And I want all the exposure to both of those. I probably will make two groups over on Fantasy Cruncher.
Yeah. So I take everything that we have in our top fighters tool, and I use the top 6 odds and like invert. Anyway, I look at all of that data. Aspen Ladd, Norma Dumont is the fight with the most likely. Any one of them is in the top 6. The Marquez fight is number 2. So if I'm going anywhere in a GPP, I think the Marquez Wright fight outside of the main event is my preferred target.
Makes a ton of sense.
All righty. We're moving on to Danny Roberts and Ramazan AMEEV.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if they're like the 2 E's at the end had some sort of like crazy speech. Anyway, second biggest favorite on the card, -310. Danny Roberts +240. AMEEV is 9,100. Danny Roberts coming in at 7,100. This one feels tricky for me. Huge favorite. Not necessarily the biggest odds to finish this fight.
Yeah, he's not a finisher at all, Josh. And he plays around by being lethargic throughout his fights. He's really good within 2 rounds, but the 3rd round is what's always, he's always live to lose because I don't know if it's his cardio, it's his output, it's his confidence, but he's not a high volume fighter to begin with. He likes to get takedowns. He will throw good combinations. His skill set's excellent. Like, he's a phenomenal fighter, but I think that, when he's met with resistance, sometimes he could possibly lose confidence, or it's a cardio issue. And, against Roberts, you have a guy who's a phenomenal striker. I think that's a little bit of reach. He's a solid striker, but he's terrible defensively for submissions, for striking. I think that, he's an offensive fighter. So he's a good hammer. He's a terrible nail. And I think that he's going to be the nail in this matchup, given the odds and given everything I've seen. But be careful here, because I tell you, Ramazan AMEEV has nearly lost several of these fights because it's round 2.5 and on. He looks exhausted and he looks like he's about to give away the fight. So be very, very careful. We could possibly see Ramazan AMEEV get a finish, given, the skill set and the absence of Danny Roberts. Roberts hasn't been in the cage in quite some time, and he's looking to return against a very, very difficult opponent. But if you look at AMEEV's UFC track record, he has not finished a fight. Decision wins over Alvi, Mina, Sekulic. Decision loss to Martin. Stolze, Zavada. No finishes on his record at all. Priced at 9,100. He's either going to have to find a finish or up his volume to really start to get my attention. I'll have exposure to him, but I think I like a lot of other fighters better.
AMEEV +450 and +400 to win by TKO and or submission on both sides. -165 that this fight goes to a decision. This feels like a really difficult fight to want to get a lot of, particularly in a GPP sense. Doesn't feel like a finish is coming, and has the added bonus of being 9,100 on this card, the second most expensive fighter, at least as of right now.
Yeah, I mean, if AMEEV was going to find a finish, you would think it would be in this matchup against Roberts. I'm telling you, because Roberts, is traditionally aggressive, but once he's hit with a shot, he crumbles. He also is somewhat chinny at times. Knockout losses to Perry, Nordine Taleb, Michel Pereira, a submission loss to Silva. So I think that there is a path to getting a sneaky finish, but Ramazan AMEEV really has to look inward and look at his performances and say, I need to change something. I either need to be more aggressive early, or I need to have a stronger round 3, because I'm almost giving some of these fights away. And given that question mark, I'll be a little hesitant with this matchup. And I would probably recommend targeting other fighters around the salary range.
Anything else here for Roberts and AMEEV?
Yeah, not really. I mean, Roberts could pull, this fight from behind and possibly steal the fight, given the nature of AMEEV. I don't really foresee him knocking him out. He is talented, but I think this is going to go the distance and probably come down to the second half of the second round and the third round.
Now, this is a fight that I'm actually interested in targeting, at least up top. If I'm taking somebody at 9K or higher, this is where it is. Ludovic Klein, Nate Landwehr, minus 340 for Klein, plus 260 on Landwehr. Klein is, let's see, minus 125 to win by TKO or KO, plus 750 by submission. But we're here for the strikes. We are here for the violence. This is the biggest favorite on the card, and I certainly want to target him if I'm going over 9K. This is the spot, significantly more so than AMEEV.
Yeah, I like Ludovic Klein. I liked him coming into the UFC. He is a phenomenal striker, excellent kicks, excellent combinations. You saw that in his debut victory over Shane Young. It was one barrage. He landed 9 significant strikes, knocked them down, finished them within 1 minute and 16 seconds. Now, in the fight against Michael Trezano, you saw a little bit more of his skill set in that matchup. Trezano is somewhat of a generalist and is just a tough fighter to go against. And you saw Ludovic Klein fall behind on the striking numbers, but resort to his takedowns at times, which I think is interesting. It's almost somewhat concerning to me. If he can't get the knockout, does he start to become a grappler who panics? If he does that, you could see an upset here with Nate Landwehr. But the reason the odds are like they are is because Nate Landwehr, regionally and over in M1 was a fantastic fighter. But in the UFC, it has been very, very tough sledding. Lost his debut fight against Herbert Burns via knockout, which kind of blew everybody's mind. Herbert Burns, more of a jiu-jitsu guy, not so much of a striker. Pulled off the victory, high volume victory over Darren Elkins, but then lost just recently to Julian Erosa via flying knee. So he might be somewhat chinny. And if he is chinny, Ludovic Klein's going to walk right through him and get him out of there early. So it's just a matter of, does it happen in round one? Or does Ludovic Klein somewhat temper his volume, and that allows Nate Landwehr back into the fight? This is another fight. Well, I'll have plenty. I might make another group and make this a must roster fight for me. I view Ludovic Klein pretty heavily. I agree with the odds, 9,200. He looks excellent to get that Francis Ngannou early round 1 KO bonus. I'll have plenty of him, but I think that Nate Landwehr is a very sneaky target as well, given his toughness and resume.
Okay. Landwehr, 9% owned in our first run. That is the lowest number of anyone on the slate.
Yeah, I think that's pretty low, man. And I think that's more about recency bias. And you look at, he's lost 2 fights in the UFC via knockout, and now he's going up against one of the best knockout artists within the division. So I think that could possibly break the slate if Landwehr comes through. But Ludovic Klein is my pick.
You and me both. Shout out to Monkey Knife Fight, the presenting sponsor of this show. Their player prop contests are easy to play, low commitment. You can use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up, get a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. So just head to monkeyknifefight.com to get started. We have NFL and MLB player prop tools that can help you make the best decisions for those types of contests. But we also have the Knockout Kings contest on the MMA side. If you think you'll pick 3 fighters, if you think you want to pick one gets a knockout, you need more than a half. But, if you understand, you need 1 to get 1.25x. If you want to pick 2 or more, 2.5x. If you think all 3 fighters can get a knockout and you want to take that mark, you think you need all 3, you get 6x. So my question to you is this. Do you see anybody on this slate? You got 11 fights. How confident are you in knockouts in any of them? Who do you want to take? Like, if you wanted to make a bet, would you want one? Like, I think this is a knockout. I can't be confident in anything else. Take the 1.25x and call it a day. Or do you want to go for the full board? Do you see 3 knockouts on this card?
Ooh, 3. 3 is a little tough. And 3 is a little tough. I definitely see 2. I think somebody's getting knocked out in that Marquez Wright fight, and somebody's getting knocked out in the Ludovic Klein, Nate Landwehr fight. And it's just given the nature of both of these fighters and the intensity, I definitely view 2 of them. 3 is where it could get a little tricky.
Well, if you want to take those 2 that we mentioned and one last flyer, the goal is to get 1.5. You can get 2.5x your buy-in on that bad boy. We'll see how that works out for us. We've got 2. Brandon Davis, Dana Batgarel. All right, we're going to start this one over. Brandon Davis and Dana Batgarel, minus 188. I'm probably not saying it right, but there's too many letters in that name, and there's too many A's at the end of Dana. It's probably Dana or something along those lines. Brandon Davis, plus 152. I'm going to turn it over to you, Pete, so people can get actual information.
You know, what's crazy is you wouldn't have even known this, but it's Dana Batgarel. Which I don't understand why it is, but it is. 8,600, 7,600 for Brandon Davis coming through. Brandon Davis is a guy that was in the UFC, fought some legitimate competition, was booted from the UFC, and is now returning. So Brandon Davis is known for being an aggressive fighter with solid striking, but it's his pace and it's his cardio that really shines through. The guy throughout his training camps runs like a marathon every 2 days or something ridiculous like that. I'm not even exaggerating. That's exactly what he does. It's somewhat concerning on his body, but his cardio is endless. And I think that whenever you have such a high work rate like that, you have my attention of pulling off the upset. And Dana Batgarel is a guy that has been knocking out his opponents, 2 back-to-back wins over Kevin Natividad and Guido Canetti in the first round. Scored 128 against Natividad, 107 against Canetti, priced only at 8,600. I'll tell you what, Brandon Davis is tough, but Brandon Davis has been rocked a lot within UFC. So I think that this is a sneaky fight to target, given the work rate of both of these guys. My issue is if this ends up going the distance, striking is not really in our favor when it comes to the scoring for DraftKings. That we need knockdowns, we need takedowns, we need something like that. And that's where a guy in Brandon Davis can get some takedowns and can use, his wrestling to somewhat stifle the offense of Batgarel, steal some rounds, solidify some rounds. So I'll have exposure to the underdog here, but everything I've seen from Dana Batgarel shows me that he has crisp combinations and he has that death touch. I mean, for a guy to be so light and knocking people out cold, it's not the most common thing. And whenever you are a fighter at 8,600, you could get a quick win bonus for us, which I don't foresee happening. But I think that you have to really garner some ownership in his direction. So I like Batgarel to win the fight, but Brandon Davis is definitely a part of my underdog pool.
Yeah, I think you laid that one out perfectly. Fight goes to decision, minus 150, but Batgarel by TKO or KO, plus 250, plus 275, plus 300, depending on where you're looking. So you're going to get probably one, like you have that option of the quick finish, or the general odds on this fight are 60-40. I'm willing to take that shot on the underdog at 7,600 there, given the way that, it's expected. It's more likely to go to decision. I think that makes me more interested than in trying to grab an underdog. So breakdown was spot on as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I agree with you. And I'll say that Brandon Davis is a guy that can steal a decision given his well-rounded skill set, whereas Batgarel is more of a specialist knocking people out, sniping from the outside. So I think it's going to be an exciting one, and it's really going to come down to that final round.
We close it out with Ariane Carnelossi and Estela Nunez. Thank God those names were easier to do. Carnelossi minus 264, Nunez plus 134. We've got Carnelossi coming in at 8,500. We've got Nunez coming in at 7,700. What are you seeing in this fight opener?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one, man. It's definitely a weird one. Estela Nunez, a fighter who hasn't fought in 3 years, coming from the one championship promotion. She has fought some decent competition over there, but I could say the same thing about Ariane Carnelossi having UFC experience and being under the lights and being a part of the best organization in the world. Debuting against Angela Hill, talk about a very, very rough debut. And then, coming back and fighting Na Liang, in one of the most amazing cards ever, because that was the return from COVID, I believe, if I'm correct with the fans. So I'll say that, Ariane Carnelossi, she's a tank for the division. Even if you're looking at her Tapology page, she's, she reminds me of like a Jessica Andrade. She looks just so tough and strong for the division. Estela Nunez is definitely the wild card for this slate. And there's always a wild card where you don't know. And the fear of the unknown is something that can get us in trouble here. Be careful with this fight, but I am favoring Ariane Carnelossi. I think that she's a more well-rounded fighter. And, given that UFC experience already, I'll have to side with her in the matchup. But I really don't view this fight as a must-roster fight. And it's kind of low on my priority scale.
I like the Carnelossi side, plus 250 to win this fight by TKO KO, which I find at least mildly interesting. I rarely, I'm with Jason. I hate being on that first fight of the card. I always feel like I'm on the wrong side of it. But at 8,500, I think that's a decent price for the odds of a finish in this spot. It is minus 150 to go to decision. So I'm not like super heavily invested here, but I was surprised to see those TKO odds on this fight. I'm curious to see if they get longer and longer as we get closer to Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I like Carnelossi, and I want to view her as a parlay piece, and I have to stop myself because of the unknowns of Estela Nunez. I don't really know if Estela is really on the same level as Carnelossi, even though Carnelossi is somewhat low level within the division. But, you know, the jump from regional or even cross promotion from ONE FC to the UFC is a significant jump. And the one thing is, like, I wish Carnelossi was a little bit cheaper. You know, I'm kind of like, if she was 8,300 or something like that, which I would probably be a little bit more interested, but it's tough. That mid-range 8,000, you know, it's littered with amazing fighters. You got, you know, Bakary. If you spend up a little bit, you can get my girl Manon Fiorot, Julian Marquez. Like, we're talking about some solid high 8K and mid 8K options this week.
I believe you guys generally close this out with you giving picks for every fight, correct?
Yes, let's see. Let's do it.
The floor is yours because there's no chance that I'm doing that.
Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. So let's start from the top. This is just straight up picks. It is not DFS related. I'm going to go with Norma Dumont in the co-main event, Andre Arlovski, Jim Miller, Manon Fiorot, big time, Julian Marquez, Andrew Sanchez for the upset, Hamazan AMEEV, he's still very boring, Lupita Godinez, Ludovic Klein, but I think it could get tricky, Dana Bakary, and Ariana Carnelossi. And yeah, I'm excited for the fights. I cannot wait. And just like each week, the fights are on at 4 p.m., I believe. But, you know, this is a very odd main event. But given the rest of the card, I'm okay with it.
Well, I want one more thought for you. I need you to make one more pick. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I need you to pick the actual best fight of Saturday. Who wins? Corey Anderson, Ryan Bader?
I think Corey Anderson. I really like Ryan Bader, but I love what I've seen from Corey Anderson of him, you know, putting everything together. And I love how you're interested in Bellator. Vadim Nemkov is on the card as well. Like, amazing talent that's coming into Bellator from other countries and, you know, fighters exiting the UFC. And I think we are seeing the best of Corey Anderson. Ryan Bader has been amazing, but I think that Corey Anderson is on the rise.
I will never in my life be able to respect anything that Ryan Bader does for losing to Tito Ortiz.
Oh my God. I know. Dude, I forgot all about that. Dude, it
was 2011. I remember it like it was like 2015 and Ortiz was like super washed. He was just super washed in 2011 too.
Yeah, exactly. And his career has stretched out even longer. So it goes to show you that, you know, a lot of fighters start fighting for a paycheck towards the tail end of their career. And if we could start targeting the rising prospects against those aging veterans, I don't think Andre Arlovski is the guy, but there are plenty of UFC fighters and fighters at the tail end of the career that are basically there for a paycheck.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan Bader has done nothing but be awesome since that loss. So very, very much took it in stride. Hasn't had a lot of problems since then. And it's not like they came against garbage either. Nemkov, Rumble. I mean, those are the only two legitimate losses in the past like 5 years. So
those are scary guys, man. Those are scary guys to fight. Like, I mean, I think I'd rather go to heavyweight than light heavyweight, but I don't know. Regardless, it's very, very scary up towards the high end of the weight divisions.
I want to be in a weight class where no matter when I get hit, the lights just go clean out. I don't want to take the full on beating. Like, I'm terrified to be a lighter weight fighter. And well, like, I'm terrified to be a fighter in general. I'm terrified to be a lighter weight fighter and get into like an actual war. Unless I'm fighting like Mark Hunt or something at heavyweight. I don't want to, like, I'm in there. People always ask about, oh, like, what would you do if you had to fight Francis Ngannou? I was like, not care. I wouldn't even know what happened.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a terrifying experience for sure. But yeah,
you would never feel the first thing that hits you. The game would just immediately be over.
Yeah. You just got to hope that Francis Ngannou doesn't throw a punch like he did against Derek Lewis.
Right. Or honestly, the thing that I need to hope the most is that he just doesn't kill me. Yeah, I have to worry that the strike is murderous. Otherwise, I'm just going to wake up later with a real nasty headache and probably some whiplash. Yeah. Nice I I hope, because if he hits me with the thing that he hit over him with, I'm done, man. He's going to remove my head from my shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that note, guys, thank you for joining us here on the MMA Strategy Show. You'll be in luck. Jason Floyd will be back next week to take over for me. Pete will be back as well because he should be. Good luck this Saturday. Enjoy yourselves, everybody. We'll talk to you again later.
Thanks, guys.